Hey everybody, thanks for joining me in the garden today. We're going to do some tomato planting, but it's not just going to be any regular tomato planting. We're going to be doing a trial. We're going to see a little experimentation in the garden this year. I have 4 variety of tomatoes we're going to be planting, and we're going to plant some of them just in the regular garden soil. We're going to plant some of them with compost dug underneath where the plant's going to be, and a little special thing, we're going to do an egg in the hole. We're going to break some farm raised eggs up underneath the tomato, and we're going to see if not only if that eggshell provides some calcium needed to prevent blossom end rot, but we're going to see if that yolk and white can provide some nutrition for the organisms in the soil, and if they can break that down to help feed that tomato plant. All other things in this garden will remain consistent and constant. All watering will be constant. Any other additional fertilizers will be given to all the plants equally. So it's really going to show us if there's a big difference in whether or not you put compost when you plant, or if you try something a little different and put an egg in the hole. Let's prepare this soil real quick. We've got a little bit of grass coming in. I'm just going to go ahead and take this hoe and break it up, disturb the roots of that grass. This can be accomplished very quickly, as you're going to see. Step right in that bed. I'm not worried about compacting the soil much. This soil is really good and loose. There you go. You can make quick work. You keep on top of your weeds, keep on top of all these things, you can make quick work of what would otherwise turn into a major issue. If you didn't do this kind of disturbing of the soil while your garden was dormant or fallow, the weeds could really take hold, go to seed, and cause you all types of issues. But you just do a little shallow cultivation like this from time to time and disturb the roots of the weeds, you can stay on top of them. It really makes your life a lot easier in the end. Well, looks like the hoeing part's pretty well done. Now, let's take a look at our spacing. In order to determine the spacing, I just use my tomato cages. In our previous video, I showed you how to put these tomato cages together, and I allow a few inches in between each cage, but basically I press the cage into the ground. I've got about 6 inches between the next cage. Now I'm going to pull that up. It's left me a little hole. I'm going to use the other side. I just want it to kind of leave me an idea of where that cage is going to sit. Now I can see. We're going to go right in the middle of that with a trowel. You're going to dig it up. You want to get down really good. This is going to be a tomato that we're not going to put anything in the hole with. Okay? Let's see what variety we want to do. I have wine, Arkansas, rose, and porter. Let's do the wine. Pull the tomato out. You're going to want to pull the bottom leaves on about the bottom 6 inches of the plant. Throw those to the side. Take that, put it soil level, and backfill. Okay? There's one more stem I'm going to remove. You don't want those stems on the bottom to be touching the soil. Sometimes that can lead to issues with disease, but early in the season, you shouldn't really have to worry about that. set your cage, and you're ready to move to the next one. Got another cage right here I'm going to grab. Go a couple inches over, give a little twist so I can see where that's going to be. This one is going to be compost. I'm going to have to dig a little bit deeper, so I'm going to set my trowel to the side. I'm going to grab my big shovel, get a couple scoops out. There we go. Looks good. Got some good garden soil here. Now, let's get some of this good compost. I just scooped this right out of the compost pile. Still has some chunks in there, but I'm gonna put, about half a shovel's worth in there. Looks real good. And kind of chop it up just a little bit. Some worms and some crawlies in there. They ought to do a fine job down the season in this garden, creating worm castings, which are going to fertilize this tomato, in theory, going down through the growing season. Planting, I removed a few branches, just like before. Planting in the center of the hole. It's about 7 inches deep. Just backfilling the soil around it. Since I added that compost from the compost pile, I won't need all the dirt that I'd taken out of this hole. Like I said, I just added about a shovel's worth. So that additional dirt, it will end up just being part of the rest of the garden. Press those home-built cages right into place. Move on to the next one. Now, as I said earlier, this next technique is pretty controversial in the gardening world, but I haven't seen anybody do a side-by-side comparison. So that's what I'm gonna do. Let's figure out our spacing. Going about the same distance as before. Set that to the side. Dig our hole. Oh, lots of good night crawlers in this garden. If I was going fishing today, I'd have bait for hours. And I attribute that to just, well, not tilling, which I do shovel the soil, but I never till it. I don't have a tiller. And yeah, I don't kill a lot of worms. I do a lot of shallow cultivation. I only dig when I plant. Now, in order to give this a fair go at it, I'm not gonna do one egg. I got some, I'd say a small and a couple large eggs. I'm gonna put them right there in the hole. I got 3. Let's do a 4th one. I got a real tiny one there. I'm gonna crack them. The thing is, I don't want to pull up these tomato plants at the end of the year and have some rotten old tomato down there, or a rotten egg. So I cracked them. I'll bring you in for that and show you. Look at that. Scrambled. You see that? Scrambled eggs. We're gonna let that feed the garden. So now that I've shown you the eggs in the hole, I'm gonna go ahead and cover those up. Oh, just enough so that you don't see the yolk. I don't really want the tomato roots sitting in egg yolk. I just don't think that'd be a good idea. But I know, having only an inch of soil over them, the tomato is definitely going to get down there and have access to that nutrition. Let's pull these leaves off, the bottom leaves, and let's just backfill it with some good garden topsoil. Looks good. Been gardening this dirt for years. I built this bed originally about 9 years ago. Part of it's over a concrete slab. I think they used to have a dog here, maybe, I don't know, previous owners. There was like an 8x8 concrete slab, and that's where my garden sits over. But I've got plenty of dirt, plenty of room for these cages to go down into the soil. Ah, perfect. Get that plant up there. I'm gonna put a little dirt around there. Good and stable. Now, broke a branch off there while I was handling it. That'll be okay though. Well, so we've got our first one just straight in the garden. Our second one has a big scoop of compost right underneath it. Our third one here, it has 4 eggs in a hole. Why don't you post in the comments below and tell me what you think is going to work out best? I honestly don't know, but I can't wait to find out. These tomatoes are supposed to be a beefsteak variety, vine, well, heritage vine, I believe. I have another video where I went over and showed you the seed packets, so you can always tune in to my germination, how to get 100% germination on your tomato plants, and I go over all the varieties that I'll be planting today. But this here concludes the trial part of my garden, my tomato garden. But I'm gonna go ahead and back the camera up a little bit and go ahead and get some more tomatoes planted in this patch. So let's see what we can do. All right, now earlier when I hoed up the first part of the garden for the tomato, I didn't come down this far, mainly because I couldn't get it in the footage. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get the weeds cultivated in this part. There we go. And yes, these are railroad ties, but they're about 70 years old. I've never had a problem. This garden is full of life. Worms, all kinds of things. So I'm sure some people will comment saying not to grow in a raised bed with creosote railroad ties, but these things are so old, anything that was in there is long gone. Otherwise the soil life wouldn't be hanging on and doing as good as it is. Okay, that's good to go. Grab a couple cages off camera here. Let's see here. Figure out how many more spots I have. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 4 cages left. I got spots for 5, but I've only got 4 cages. So let's see. Got 3 more varieties left. My first one that I planted was a porter for the competition. That's not going to be, that's like a salad tomato. I think I'd prefer to focus on these slicers at this point. They all look good. These Arkansas Travelers look really good. I'm thinking about just going 2 and 2, Arkansas Traveler and 2 rows, and I'll just have the 1 porter. That makes that 2 ounce tomato. Those usually, a smaller tomato like that, they usually make a bumper crop of tomatoes. So I think only 1 of those will be sufficient anyways. So let's see. All right, next up, Arkansas Traveler. Once again, pulling off those bottom stems, putting this down deep in the hole. I'd say it's every bit of 8 inches down. Now, one thing I do want to mention, and it'll be in, I'll have a future video on it showing you. However, I won't be able to show you the process on video. It's going to be more of a voiceover slide presentation. I did a core gardening method in this garden bed. Basically what that means is I dug a trench right down the center of this garden bed, and I filled that trench with straw. About in that 10 to 12 inch deep trench, I put about 6 inches of straw just laid down. What that's gonna do is that's gonna hold the moisture. That straw is gonna act like a wick. And I can tell you what, we've had a lot of rain lately, but this soil's always been well draining. And when I dig down deep like that, there's a lot of soil moisture down there. Not to the point where I feel like I'd have to worry about any type of rot, but I really feel like adding that straw is gonna help me immensely in the dog days of summer, when previous years I'd be out here watering my tomatoes every other day, you know, whether I thought I needed to or not, just to make sure that the tomatoes could maximize their production. Having that straw in the garden, it's going to hold that moisture. It's going to hold that moisture down deep where the roots are going to grow. And also, I would say the roots of those tomato plants are going to try to grow towards that straw. And I'd say that straw line is about right here. That's about the middle of the bed. And that's where I put that straw, right in the center of the bed. And I really can't wait to see, you know, the effects, especially like I said, in the summer when it gets real hot and we'll go, you know, a couple weeks without rain. I don't want to have to be out here watering all the time. Not that I don't enjoy it, but you want to make the garden as self-sufficient as possible. Plus, the less you water, the stronger those plants are going to be. If you don't, because when you water normally, it's just a shallow watering, and the roots are always going to try to go where the water's at. If you make the plants fend for their own water, at the same time making sure they're healthy, of course, you don't want to put them through stress. But if they can rely on themselves to get their own water, you know, a good example, and I'm not trying to be controversial in any way, shape, or form, but if you would think of someone who didn't have to work for what they had, maybe, for whatever reason that may be, doesn't really matter, but if they came across a situation where all of a sudden what they were not working for was no longer provided, that plant or person or animal, whatever it may be, say an animal in the zoo, they're always fed 3 meals a day. If you put that animal out of the zoo and into the woods, is it going to be able to survive? Probably not, because it's going to be so used to just being fed. I feel the same for these tomato plants. I want to bury them deep so that they have access to that moisture that's deep in the soil. In the summer, the top 2 or 3 inches could be dry, but as long as they're deep and the roots grow down deep and they have access to that straw, that core that I've placed in this garden, then they're going to do a lot better on their own. They're going to be able to handle drought stress. They're going to be able to handle heat. And like I've said in previous videos, a healthy plant is less likely to be attacked by insects. It's less likely to be hindered by disease. It's no different than a predator in the wild. A predator is not going to go after the strongest and the fittest of prey. It's going to look for the weak, the tired, the older prey that they feel like they can take. Insects are no different. Disease is no different. If your plant has a lower immune system because it's stressed and it's not able to thrive, and it's stressed because its environment, it doesn't have the water it needs, it's going to be more susceptible to these other issues. So I really hope that this video has been helpful. I think it's going to be great. It's going to help your tomato production. If you found it to be helpful, I'd really appreciate it. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel. I plan on putting a lot more content out. I've been gardening for over 20 years. I started a hobby farm years ago and we sold it. It was a 15-acre hobby farm. We raised beef, and I had started a blackberry patch. We had chickens, goats, all kinds of stuff. I built the fences from scratch. There was nothing there but fields of overgrown trees. So I have a lot of information. I've done a lot of things in the gardening. I've grown lots of things. We had like I said, I started a blackberry patch. It was over an acre size. And so I know a lot about growing blackberries. Started asparagus, had about 60 peach trees, planted a bunch of apple trees. I've just done a lot when it comes to gardening and being outside and, you know, growing my own food. So I feel like I have a lot of information, a lot of valuable information that could help, you know, newer gardeners who maybe they were raised in the city, or, you know, maybe their grandparents or parents never gardened. Well, my dad didn't really garden, but my grandma always had a garden. I've got cousins who farm. They farm field crops. They grow corn and soybeans and all those things. So farming and gardening runs in my blood. It's just something I love to do. I've always enjoyed being outside, hands in the dirt, just growing my own food. Now, of course, in a garden this size, being in town, not gonna be able to grow enough food to, you know, survive on, but there's something about going outside, picking something fresh off the plant, going inside and enjoying it. Whether it be, you know, a juicy red tomato, a fresh green tomato, for fried green tomatoes, of course. Those are delicious. Or growing fruit like blackberries, growing fresh watermelons, which I love to grow. And don't mean to sound cocky, but I can pick a perfect watermelon, and I'll show you that. I know that's one of the things that people are always asking. I see it all the time on social media. How do you tell when a watermelon's ripe? How do you tell, you know? And I understand. You grow something for 100 days, 80, 90 days. Last thing you want to do, go out there and pick it and it be underripe. So, yeah, that's a little more about me. Thanks for joining me while we grew these, or planted these tomatoes rather. Got some extra plants. I'll try to find a home for them somewhere else here. If not, I like to grow extras. It just cost me a couple seeds. These 8 plants will provide plenty of tomatoes for me and my family later on this summer. So yeah, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, share to your favorite social media gardening groups, and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be producing content like this all summer long to help you grow your gardens better, more efficient, higher productivity. Have a great day. Thank you.